2020. And the reason it's taken us so long to get before you this evening is twofold. One, site constraints with well and septic. We misunderstood, I guess, essentially how we could program the site. We were hoping to have a larger scale project to make the economies of scale work, and we're unable to get that to pencil, essentially. So we've been iterating on the project for the last few years. There's been a lot of inflationary considerations as well with materials and labor. So it's just been a challenge to get an economically feasible project, and I'm proud to say that we believe we have that before you, and our time has not been wasted in the last few years, however. I've been working very closely with the Historic District Commission on the site plan concept and obviously building design as it is in the historic zone. So we have received approval from the HDC on the scope that is proposed for the seminary, the site plan, as much as the HDC has our purview of approving the site plan, and for 4 of the single-family homes of the 13, the 4 facing the street, so the 3 on Main Street and the 1 on Church Street, we've selected home designs for those and started to, made selections, and the HDC has approved the direction on those homes. We would go back to the HDC as the other homes are designed, which would happen as sales occur. So I think that's the high-level update on sort of where we are in the process. We're here for a site plan this evening, and the project is proposing 13 single-family homes that are, it's not a subdivision, they're condos, so we're not subdividing the lot. It's going to remain one lot. So there'll be 13 limited common areas for the single-family homes. There'll be a limited common area for the Swayze gym, and there'll be a limited common area for the seminary building, which will be converted into 12 apartment homes. So that is the project before you on a high level. Brian, is there anything else?
I can run through a few of the site specifics if it'd be helpful to the board. Sure. I can use this microphone up here.
That should be. It does not work. Oh, it does? Oh, you put one in? Okay.
Testing. There we go.
Oh, yeah, you're on. That's a live mic right there.
Good.
Switched it out.
Paul didn't mention, but we have some color renderings up, and I'll just orient you quickly. This is Main Street. Backy School is on the left, site's on the right. Seminary building, you can kind of see through the proposed 3 houses that we have on Main Street. And then this view is from Church Street, looking up the existing driveway. You can see the fence would be there.
That's also Main Street also, sorry.
I apologize, you're right. This is also Main Street. Looking up the driveway, it doesn't show the arch, but that is obviously there and going to remain. And this building here would be reflective of this building here. This is Church Street. It has a little bend there. And again, existing driveways we're going to maintain, and you can see the scale and scope of the single-family dwellings. And there's one last rendering. This is just internal to the site. The gym would actually be directly behind you, and you're looking at the seminary building. But I will run through a few specifics of the site, as I'm sure there'll be questions regarding that. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. It's a 12.8 acre site. It's mostly developed today, except for the westerly side and the northerly side, where there's a wetland area and woods. Property is in the historic 1 zone, and also in the Aquifer Protection District A. Setbacks in this zone are 20 feet for front, rear, and side, and maximum lot coverage is up to 35% with board approval. Generally, the topography is highest in the middle, and then it sort of slopes off in all directions. It's about elevation 136 in the middle, and then about 128 here, and a little bit lower in the back, about 126. So, as Paul mentioned, we intend to construct 13 three-bedroom, single-family dwellings, which are detached condominiums, and also renovate the existing seminary building into apartments, 12 studio apartments. We would construct a small parking lot for the seminary building, parking. There are 2 spaces for each unit in the seminary building. And in general, we're just maintaining the existing curb cuts on Main Street. The 2 larger driveways would remain, and then the existing driveway entrance for the house that was demolished would be consolidated a little bit, but the locations are consistent with what's there today. We are proposing a sidewalk connection from the school across the street. We tie into the crosswalk to the gym, so we will have a concrete sidewalk connecting those 2 facilities. We are also proposing some curbing and parking improvements directly in front of the gym, just to improve ADA access and dress up the front of the gym. We are going to have a mail kiosk for the residents here, located here. There's a pull-off so that people can temporarily park there and get their packages. All U.S. postal deliveries would occur in that location. For stormwater management, there is going to be a 30,600 square foot reduction in impervious area with this proposed development. So we're actually removing quite a bit of pavement and building as part of the project. So in general, that's a site improvements for stormwater. We have other stormwater improvements on site, swales and a subsurface chamber system that we have designed to provide water quality treatment, and the stormwater is generally collected and then discharged to the wetland at the rear. The water and sewer needs for the project are all handled on site with on-site wells and individual septic systems. They're fairly well detailed on the site plans that were submitted, but in general there are 3 proposed wells in this location. 2 of those 3 would each serve 4 of the buildings, and the 3rd well would serve the seminary building. The 2 that serve the multiple dwellings would have a common well pump house with expansion tank and controls and so forth. And then the remaining houses in the lower part here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, would each have their own wells. And every dwelling has its own septic system, including the gym existing septic system, which would remain. And the systems obviously will be designed in accordance with state regs and also the town regulations. We understand we're in the Aquifer Protection District, and there's more stringent regulations, particularly with nitrate loading. So we had recently completed our hydrogeological study and nitrate loading analysis. That's been submitted to the town, and the town's peer reviewer is going through that. But essentially, we need to not exceed 5 milligrams per liter of nitrate at any point around the site. So the septic systems will be special. They'll have a enhanced nitrogen removal step. That's part of it prior to the effluent being directed to the leach field. Site lighting, we did include a site lighting plan and have pedestrian scale lighting throughout. However, we did get a comment from Historic Commission asking to consider reducing the light, and we spoke with the applicant and they're willing to do that. We may remove some of the internal lighting, still obviously light the sidewalk connection to the gym and the school, and some entrance lighting in the parking lot, but we may remove some of the fixtures if that would accommodate the Historic Commission request. There was a pretty detailed landscaping plan also included with the site plan application, and speaking with the landscape architect, her goal was to use native or adaptive plantings that are drought tolerant, but also the main focal point, in addition to street trees along Main Street, is to create this this treed roadway up to the seminary building on both sides. And she has selected American sycamore and red maple. And then throughout the other the site, there's other trees as well, but that really was intended to be a focal point to recreate a street tree lined driveway to the seminary building. We have requested a waiver for a reduction in required parking, and that's not for our apartments or the dwellings. The apartment building has the required parking. It's because the gymnasium would require 210 parking spaces. So we are requesting a waiver, understanding that additional parking is directly across the street that's commonly used for this facility. And we'd be happy to discuss that further. And there was a comment regarding a conditional use permit for work within the wetland buffer. I will say that we're not proposing anything beyond what's already been developed, and we are staying outside of the 50-foot. There is some work between 50 and 75 feet and within the 100-foot buffer. So that is also something that we need to work out with the town. Paul and I are here to answer questions. We're very familiar with the site. Hopefully we'll be able to answer anything you have. Thank you.
All right, next we will move to comments from the town engineer and town planner. Dennis, your letter is first, so if you could go through your comments, that would be great.
Great, thank you. Let me turn my mic. How's that? Can you hear me? Hear me now? Okay, so submitted my copy of the review that I did on the plans, and I got the 42 sheet plan set and the drainage report binder that contained a lot of the other information and calculations for the project. So I offer the following comments for the board to consider. I found on my plan set that I didn't have sheet L401, but I'm sure that could be submitted in the next plan set. I think the abutters list should be shown, that is shown on the plans. It should be current. I'm not sure it is. My comment number 3 is Article 201.4B. Will a hydrogeologic study be needed? And I think Brian mentioned that being done, worked on. Number 4, Article 202, wetland buffers. The information provided in the Gove report, which I got a copy of that in that binder, identified specific functions of the wetlands associated with the property. The points add up to 10, requiring a minimum building buffer setback from the wetlands of 75 feet. The overall site plan, sheet C102, shows proposed units 1 and 2 with septic systems, proposed pump house, and portions of the parking on the north side of the site are within this buffer. Moving these items outside the buffer is recommended. Number 5, a portion of the north parking lot is within 5 feet of the lot line. Although existing, by creating a landscaped area at the entrance, snow plowing would result in piles ending up over the property line. Moving the parking area outside the side setback buffer is recommended. And I also took a ride by there in that area, which I'm referring to is on the north side of the site. And there's a fence there that's now, it's knocked over, and you can see that when you go there. So it looks like it's being compromised already. So I think it'd be appropriate to move the parking lot away from that. My comment number 6, Article 905 3K, this project meets requirements for a subdivision. Number 7, Article 905-7, easements. This project should show easements and limited common areas for each unit. Number 8, Article 905.9, wastewater disposal. In lieu of showing 4K areas, each proposed wastewater disposal system on the property should be designed and approved by the town and the state. Number 9, state requires 75 feet distance from disposal systems and stormwater ponds that intercept seasonal water table. The town requires 100 feet. Systems for units 11 and 12 are much less than 75 feet to the stormwater pond in Pond 1A. Article 90510, layout of streets. I presume that all roadways and stormwater systems within the property will be maintained by an association. Number 11 is 90514C9. The plan must provide an endorsement block for the planning board approval. 90514C15, the survey plan must have an error of enclosure note. 90514C24, since 4K areas are not shown and test pits are not near most leaching areas, I recommend that all sanitary disposal designs be designed and approved by the town and state prior to final approval, and additional test pits may be needed within those areas. 90514C29, add a required note. Proposed system design must be submitted for the fire department to review and approve. C32 parking plan sheet C102 refers to a waiver that must be addressed by the planning board. C35 lot label. Lot labeling is that regulation, so building numbers must be approved by the town. I don't know if this numbering system would match what the town requires. So 17, Article 90514D, street construction, the location of sediment control device should appear on the grading and drainage sheets. That's where typical silt fence and core logs or chip berms would need to be shown on the plan set. Street signs, although private, will each access way street have a specific name? Number 19, a postal kiosk should be designed and its location approved by the postmaster. I noticed he said, in your presentation, you said that there. It wasn't labeled. If it was, I miss it. so I'm sure you'll have that covered. Number 20, Article 90515, provide a construction sequence with a requirement for a pre-construction meeting to be held prior to beginning of construction. Also, an anticipated phase construction plan should be provided. Number 21, Article 9073A, performance guarantee. The applicant shall submit to the planning board a construction bond estimate and reduction worksheet for review and approval by the board prior to final approval. An example can be provided. I have a copy of that. I can provide that to you if you need it, the one that we typically use. Number 22, Article 13016B2, subsurface disposal systems must be 100 feet from the wetlands. Systems for lots 1, 2, 4, and 5 need to be relocated. See my comment number 9, which talked about that a little bit. 23, details, location of the construction entrance should be shown on the grading and drainage plan. 24, stormwater design. The proposed design model shows the rate of stormwater runoff to the wetlands is less than pre-development as required. For each storm event, calculations also show that proposed volume of runoff to the wetlands is over double the pre-development volume. Perhaps the design engineer could provide information to show what impact this will be to the pathway that goes to the ball field and the downstream abutting properties. Number 25, seasonal groundwater in the area of the proposed stormwater detention pond 1A is at elevation 127. The design for that pond has its lowest elevation of 124, but labeled as a lined forebay. If the lowest outlet of the pond is elevation 128.61, there'll be over 4 feet of detained water most of the time. Number 26, there exists some stormwater volume detention within Main Street right of way off the northeast side of the property, which is elevation 129 existing. The proposed design in that area has a much more stormwater detention area within Main Street right-of-way, elevation 126 for that basin, 1A proposed. A detailed pond like this, it should have a safety fence around it, which would extend onto Main Street right-of-way. And that's, if it's ponded water, it's recommended you have a fence around it, which would go into the Main Street right-of-way. Also, an additional large detention area is proposed within the Main Street right-of-way off the southeast side of the property. Extending detention areas into the right-of-way may be a concern with maintenance and future changes that the town may need to make along Main Street. Article 908-16-5B1G says that all, quotes, all new generated stormwater from new development shall be treated on the development site, end quotes. Therefore, I recommend revising the design accordingly. Number 27, 908-16-5A2, page 33, stormwater operation and maintenance plan must be recorded with the Registry of Deeds. And that completes my review at this time.
Glenn?
Thank you, Dennis. All right, I'm a little bit wordier. So I have that this is the first public hearing for an application to redevelop a former high school property on Main Street. The board should consider invoking jurisdiction on the application and beginning a 65-day timeline for making the decision on the proposal. At the planning board's work session in January, it was determined that this proposal is not a project with regional impacts. The scope of the project is the redevelopment of the historic Sanborn Seminary into 12 apartments and the construction of 13 single-family homes spread out over the roughly 13 acres of land as condominium units. The property owner did a design review last year in January, which has allowed this application to utilize the former zoning for Historic District 1. This allows the siting of the apartments and the single-family condominium units without any additional ZBA approval. The following are my comments upon reviewing the plan set. I won't say what it is, but that's what we're on. So number one, the project has been noted. This is a dicey issue, just because. Well, I'll explain it. The project has been noticed as a site review, which is 90% of the action that the planning board will be undertaking with this proposal. However, the project is a condominium development, and as such is also a subdivision according to both state law and local regulations in the town of Kingston. Since the project will require several hearings for review, the board should send out an additional butter notification letter, making it clear that the application includes the subdivision component. I would say that we also want to make clear in that additional butter notification that there are no actual property line changes, which is what subdivisions, that's the power that the planning board has over subdivision, is that they result in property line changes. But the reason the state considers condominium subdivisions is because of that aspect that there's limited common area attached with subdivisions, and that creates ownership issues different than completely common land, and so they get deemed to be subdivisions. So it's a very conservative reading, but it's silly not to do the additional butter notification to state that this is also a subdivision, so that there is no question that our local and the state law was complied with. And so I recommend that we do that between this hearing and the next scheduled hearing, so that that issue would be resolved. There's no there's no issue with this, with the discussion of things, because from a subdivision side, really the only substantive thing the planning board is going to do is send the condominium documents out for legal review, something that they take no jurisdiction over. They simply allow our town council to make sure that they comply with what we require. So I don't see that that creates any conflict of interest in the application procedure. And so that's number one. Simple, but actually it could be difficult if we don't address it. The project parcel is located in the Aquifer Protection District, and this requires, two TWO, not two O elements. The first is a conditional use permit issued by the board as required in section G of the ordinance. The second requirement is for the preparation of a hydrogeologic study to evaluate potential impacts from the proposal upon groundwater. This report has been prepared, and the planning board has received that hydrogeologic study, and they should consider sending it to our consulting hydrogeologist for review. After they applied in December, they did have some questions in order for them to complete that review, and I allowed them to talk with Dana, understanding that they would have to pay for that separate, because when we do the hydrogeologic study, we will set up an escrow account that covers that. But in the interim, they had a couple of questions that if they couldn't talk to her, they wouldn't be able to go forward and have the materials available for us, so it didn't seem like that was an appropriate reason to hold them up. And so those discussions did happen, enabling them to comply with our ordinance the way that our consultant feels it should be complied with. And so I'm just saying that as just as an information share. The project parcel also includes wetland areas subject to the town's wetland conservation district. The plan set includes wetlands and wetland buffer areas as determined by a licensed wetland scientist who has stamped the plans. I did not see the accompanying wetlands report. I'm glad that you did, Peter. I'm Dennis. Detailing the information regarding these wetlands, so that should be submitted to the planning board. It already has been. The plan indicates both a 50-foot setback and a 100-foot setback from wetlands. The town uses functional valuations to determine the wetland setback. If the on-site wetlands result in a buffer distance greater than 50 feet, two of the homes on the plan are impacted. Roughly half of home number 1 would fall in the buffer area, and the parking spaces for home number 2 would also fall within the wetland buffer. The applicant needs to provide the planning board with the functional evaluation report and the subsequent buffer requirements to determine how to proceed with these two house sites. The wetlands ordinance does include a conditional use permit process that may be used to be of assistance in resolving this issue. Note 4 on sheet 107 needs to add wetlands conservation district to the list of zoning districts. Elevation views of the proposed single-family structure should be provided. Thank you, I see that they are. Parking spaces for the development are shown on site. The seminary building, from my count, is providing 22 parking spaces for the 12 units. The town standard for one-bedroom apartments is 2 spaces for each unit, and that would be 24. If any of the units are 2-bedroom units, the parking space numbers are very low, and so that's something that we should discuss. The single-family homes all seem to have adequate areas for parking. The gymnasium would require a waiver from town standards, as significantly fewer spaces are proposed from what is required, and the engineer for the project has already made that clear. No new driveways are proposed for this project, except I guess I'm wrong on that, and there is one on Main Street that will be for one of the units. Is that, it seemed like you were saying that?
So there's, if I may, through the chair, there are 3 existing driveways on Main Street.
Oh, so you're just...
The house that was demolished had a driveway.
Perfect, thank you. Solid waste facilities should be located on the site plan. The lighting plan should include a note stating that all exterior lights shall be dark sky compliant. The site plan should indicate the location of project signage and treatment, and I expect this will be located at one of the entry driveways. The planning board records site plans, so the meets and bounds for the property will need to be added to the site plan drawing and be stamped by a licensed land surveyor. Are the exterior fire escapes intended to remain on the seminary building? The cistern locations and their designs must be approved by the Kingston Fire Department. The plan set includes extensive landscaping. I don't believe the landscaping for the gymnasium parking area meets the town regulation for internal landscaping, so that's something that we should discuss. The town's health officer needs to approve the septic system proposed for both the apartments and the single-family homes. And that is the end of my comments.
So before we move on to the other department comments, I just want to sort of recap what I'm getting from your guidance here, is that we would need to first invoke jurisdiction. And then the subdivision review sort of is just a permission that can happen concurrently to the site plan review process, and we don't need to hold anything up for that necessarily.
Correct. I would just advise that we send out the additional notification.
Yep.
So that when and if a decision is granted in the affirmative on this project, and we actually approve it for both site plan and subdivision, that we had noticed the
That's
abutters
both.
that was a potentiality.
Condo docs, we'll need a vote to send those to town council.
Yes. We always do that as a motion to the board.
The conditional use permit for the Aquifer Protection District, as well as a vote to send the hydrogeologic study to Dana for review.
Yes, we generally, when there is a hydrogeologic study, the conditional use permit is an odd little thing we have in there that just says if the use is allowed in the underlying zoning unit, the underlying zoning district, that the planning board will make a determination to grant a conditional use permit. We generally don't do that conditional use permit vote until after the hydrogeologic study is completed and approved by Dana, so that there's no backtracking over an approval being granted and then having to be reconsidered.
Okay.
So the action that I think the board should take initially is the sending of the hydrogeologic study to Dana.
And then I'm sort of hearing from the applicant summary of the proposed work within the wetland buffer that there would be a need for a waiver there. Is that accurate?
I don't know if I think it's a little bit of gray area to me. Maybe Brian has a different opinion, but we are performing work between the 50 and the 100 foot buffer. So we're not in the no build. There's no work being proposed in the no build zone, and work that is occurring in the 50 to 100 foot buffer is going entirely on previously disturbed developed sites. So the site of the technology buildings, the site of the science building, the site of a road, roadways that are existing. So we think it's a very little impact, and this development is a net positive for the buffer and for the existing condition. So we would prefer to avoid a waiver if we can, but if we need a waiver, then we will request that.
Okay, so more conversation about that, I guess, to come.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that the ordinance allows the planning board to do a conditional use permit for that activity, and that's something I think that we should perhaps have. I don't think there is a reason that this is going to RCCD. If it was, I would say we could have Mike Cuomo give an opinion about that. In this instance, I think we should have the Conservation Commission look at this issue and talk with the developer, perhaps at one of their meetings, and then provide comment back to the planning board about their feelings of a conditional use permit allowing that, the building activity that they're proposing. I just think the board should hear from some natural resource group, and I really don't see the need for it to go to RCCD, but that's a decision for the planning board to make in the end, not for the committee.
And then the last sort of item to tackle that I noted was the gym/parking waiver. Okay. So we'll move to other board comments. And then, what's that? We could do that, yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Okay.
I was asking the chair if she wanted to have the applicant address the engineers and planners' comments before we move on. Just that seems to have been our normal mode of operation, and it kind of keeps it somewhere within the same time frame of having read them.
Happy to do that if you'd like.
Sure, yeah, let's start, I guess, with the engineer comments.
All right, so number one, I apologize if sheet 401 didn't make it into your set. We'll get that to you. Number two, butters list will have the surveyor of record just confirm that the butters listed on sheet 107 is current. Number three, hydrogeologic study has been submitted. Understand it hasn't been reviewed yet, but that's in the works. 4, wetland buffers. You're correct in that Gove did perform an evaluation of the wetland and did determine the building buffer setback points added up to 10. So we do need to meet that wetland setback or get a waiver through a conditional use permit. 5, a portion of the north parking lot is within 5 feet of the lot line. I'll just point out where that is, if I may. So this is the area that the town engineer is talking about, and internally we discussed it. It is parking for the gym. The applicant's willing to eliminate those 6 spaces if that's something that the town would want. They're of no benefit to the residential development. It is an existing parking lot, as I say, for the gym. So I will leave that to the board, and we're willing to do either.
I would also note that that parking lot cannot be relocated given the wetlands and septic systems over in that corner of the site.
The next item, number 6, I was wondering if maybe we could have a little more robust discussion about the subdivision, only because, I mean, we've done a number of condo plans in the past, and they haven't been considered a subdivision. And I did read the town's definition, and I think that there's more than enough room in there for it not to be a subdivision. And if I may just make my quick argument, and then we can have a little more discussion about it. So your definition of a subdivision is the division of a lot or tract or parcel of land into 2 or more lots, sites, or other divisions of land. Stop there. So we're not doing that. We're not dividing the land. And then your definition does go on to say, for these purposes, which includes a condominium, but we're not creating a division of the lot. So the purposes of doing the lot, that part of the definition doesn't apply. I'm not trying to parse words, but we have done a lot of subdivisions and condo plans. We've done condominium plans. Generally, we don't even go to the town because there's state regulations for condos and condo documentation, and they don't require planning board approval. So I don't know if there's some way to get some additional clarification on that, or if you just say it is what it is, then we're going to go along with it. But
The section of the language, the section of the language that we disagree with is that the language that says, or per portions of the land, is separating portions of the land. And under the condominium premise, you are separating portions of the land between common area and limited common area. And limited common area provides additional benefit to the units specifically, as opposed to the overall condominium common area. And because of that, we have always determined in town that creates a subdivision, and that the state's definition of subdivision includes condominium development, and because of that, we notice them both ways.
And if we notice it as a subdivision, we are not exposing the decision in the end to any additional scrutiny. That is simple notification will take care of it.
Anything else, Paul, or?
I mean, to be honest, I've never done a subdivision. I'm on the urban team at Schimberg, so I don't usually do the single-family homes. But I do know that we regularly do condominium projects with detached single-family homes that are not subdivisions. So I know it is common, and we do it regularly. And I know that there are a number of other comments related to complying with the subdivision requirements here in town, and part of the language that Brian mentioned, Schimberg and the applicant don't believe that this meets the standard of a subdivision because we are not dividing the land. It is a condo. They have limited common area rights, but it is all one lot. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can take this conversation offline, or if this is the standard operating procedure of the town, and you don't believe it to be an overly onerous requirement, then I think we can proceed that direction. But I don't have a lot of insight on what additional risk we're taking on by agreeing to be a subdivision when that wasn't really our intent.
So is that something that we could ask council to weigh in on?
Yeah.
Perhaps while she's reviewing the condo docs?
That'd be great. Thank you.
So number 7, project should show easements in limited common areas. We can do that. We can show the condo lines on the site plan. That would be helpful. Wastewater disposal, as you know, the state requires 4K areas for a subdivision. We're not doing a subdivision, but we can show the wastewater disposal systems on the property. And the comment is that they should be designed and approved by the town and the state. And we absolutely agree with that. But if that ends up being a condition of approval, we would request that it is a condition of building permit, only because the sequencing of building each of these houses and septic systems will be spread out over a period of time, and we can't do the designs all at once without having all the buyers and houses figured out. So obviously open to having a condition that says septic systems have to be designed and approved by the town and state, but instead of that being a condition of a final site plan, we'd ask that that be a condition of a building permit application. State requires 75 feet from a disposal system and stormwater pond. We will make edits to comply with that requirement. Number 10, layout of the streets. Presume all roadways and stormwater systems within the property will be maintained by an association. That is correct. 11, plan must provide an endorsement block. We will add that. 12, survey plan must have an error of closure note. I'm surprised that doesn't have that statement. That's typical. It is Doucette Survey is the surveyor of record. I will confirm with them and make sure that the error of closure note is on there. They did perform a boundary survey. 13, since 4K areas are not shown and test pits are not near most leach areas, I recommend that all sanitary waste disposal systems must be designed and approved by the town and state prior to the planning board final approval. And this goes back to that comment I just made. It's going to be very difficult for us to finalize each of these lots until there's a house and a buyer. That's just how it's going to proceed. So I'm asking that if there's a condition that it be made for building permit. 14, add required note, cistern design must be submitted for the fire department review and approval. I did fail to state on my presentation, we do have 2 fire cisterns shown on the site plan, dry hydrants, and we will definitely run those by the fire department and make sure they're satisfied with the locations on the site. And I also, while we're on it, did not mention that both the gymnasium and the seminary building do have sprinkler protection. There's an existing pump house and storage tank that would be maintained as part of the redevelopment of the site. So both those facilities do have sprinkler protection. Number 16, building numbers must be town approved, 100% agree. We just, our nomenclature is in there just for reference. I don't know if those will end up being the condo unit numbers, but we're happy to have building numbers assigned by the town. 17, location of the sediment control devices. Those are shown on one of the earlier sheets, the site preparation sheet, but we can show those on the grading and drainage plans. That's appropriate, and we're happy to do that. 18, street signs, although private, will each accessway have a specific street name? Yes, we have talked about that. Paul has selected a couple. Do you recall what you're thinking?
So the private way coming into the Swayze Gym is proposed to be Norway Lane, a nod to the champion Norway spruce that's on the site that we are maintaining. And then the other private way coming into the seminary and around the seminary will be Seminary Way or Lane.
And obviously, those are subject to approval by the town, your 911 commission, or however it's done in town. 19, a portal kiosk for the postmaster. We have that on the plan. We'll make sure it's noticed. 20, provide a construction sequence in a pre-construction meeting held prior to the beginning of construction and a phased construction plan. We will provide that. 21, regarding performance guarantee, we'll provide that. 22, subsurface disposal systems must be 100 feet from wetlands. So that is something we have to take a closer look at. There are several lots where they're not. And I understand that that's a town requirement, so we will make some edits. 23, location of the construction entrance should be shown on the grading and drainage plans. We will do that. 24, stormwater design. I guess instead of reading these paragraphs, I will just say we're going to take a close look and incorporate all these comments into some design edits so that we can come to an agreement that it satisfies town requirements. And I think that's it.
And I think, Len, did you have lingering comments that didn't get talked about?
No, we talked about my wetlands one, the subdivision one, that they kind of were handled with Dennis's also.
There's I'll bring up two from the planner's comments. We do have on the site plan, and maybe we just need to throw a label on it, location for proposed signage, entry signage. So that is proposed on the north corner of the site, right at the entry towards the Swayze Gym. We don't have designed signage, so we'll come back when we have it, obviously, to get a sign permit when that is actually designed, but it is shown on the plan. The other item, and it's maybe a little bit of semantics because we will still need a waiver for parking for the gym, but the New Hampshire legislature and the governor last year signed a bill into law that, in light of the housing crisis, it's RSA 674-16. It was amended so that parking minimums for multifamily buildings with 10 or more units cannot exceed 1.5 per unit. So we are in compliance with that state regulation, and we would have sought relief regardless of that state regulation from the towns too. That is excessive. We manage over 1,800 apartments, and none of our properties utilize anywhere near that high of a parking ratio. So we feel very strongly that from the apartment side, the property is well supplied with parking.
And Paul, are the apartments 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom?
They're studios and 1-beds.
And I know there was one that I think we can probably just talk about briefly. So your question number 12, are the exterior fire escapes intended to remain on the seminary building?
They are not.
I'm sorry, what? Fire escapes. I asked about them. Are they're staying or they're being?
They are being removed. They are not original to the structure. They'll be removed, and the openings in which have been modified to be emergency egresses will be restored to windows.
Yes. That's a beautiful decision.
All right. right, so we'll move on to additional board and department comments. And apologies, because it looks like I'm gonna have to do some reading, so. This is from the Board of Selectmen dated January 6, 2025. The Select Board supports this project in its entirety. General comment, this project is one of the most consequentially positive developments to happen in Kingston. The redevelopment of this significant property within our town's historic village will not only restore and preserve the iconic Sanborn Seminary building on the National Historic Register, but it will also add much needed housing stock to the community. It also keeps the former Sanborn Gymnasium building in place, which is used by the town for numerous recreational and municipal functions. Specific comments on the plan set. First, walkways to the 3 homes on Main Street intrude into the front yard setback of the property. Is it possible to relocate them to be outside of the setback? 2, a note regarding HDC's approval of these plans should appear on the plan set. 3, the town requests a roadside maintenance easement to be provided by any properties with frontage on town roads. Please indicate such on the plans. 4, some of the proposed new homes intrude into the 100-foot wetland setback line. Has a functional wetlands analysis been done to indicate that this is allowable? 5, if not already noted on plan, please include a statement that all outdoor lighting will comply with Kingston's lighting ordinance. 6, please coordinate with the Kingston DPW on any work, drainage, etc. to be done within the town's right-of-way on Main and Church Streets. I don't know if there's anything there that you want to address before some of it's already been discussed.
So number one, the walkways, the HDC did not bring this up, and I suspect one of the reasons they didn't bring this up was the fact that it is, if you look at the homes that were there, they had walkways very similar to the ones that are proposed, which were in the setback. And there are a number of other historic properties in the close vicinity that have a similar condition. So I don't know if we need a waiver on that, but we think it's consistent with what was there historically and the town's character, and would ask to keep them that way. Otherwise, I think you're going to start getting some weird, either we'd have to reorientate the buildings further back, which would not be right from a historical standpoint, and or a normal, just everyday feel right standpoint, or we would have to get rid of the walkways altogether, which I don't think is favorable either. So, the roadside maintenance easement, I'm unfamiliar with this, and maybe I can be educated a bit. I'm not. I think probably honestly the easiest thing is if you guys have an example, a draft, we would love to see a draft to see what it is, because we don't fully understand what it is. So
actually, if you would, at number 6, where he says work with DPW.
yes.
When you do that, if you talk with them about that
Okay.
roadway easement, because they're the ones that
Got it.
are interested in that, they'll give you the language that they like to see.
Perfect. I think that was the only new items.
All right, next up, Kingston Conservation Commission. This is dated January 17th, 2025. In regards to the Sanborn Seminary, 178 Main Street, map R34, lot 17. Portions of proposed homes 1 and 2 fall within the 100-foot wetland vernal pool buffer. The Conservation Commission has evidence of a vernal pool existing in the wetland as it was used as part of a high school ecology project, which E.V. Nathan supervised several years ago. As we've stressed in the past, upland areas surrounding vernal pools are as important as the pools themselves, as species that spawn in pools migrate out of them into surrounding habitat. The Conservation Commission feels it is imperative to hold to state and local standards regarding wetland buffers, particularly vernal pool buffers, and though occasionally it may be necessary to strike a balance, all efforts possible should be made to preserve environmental integrity. The Conservation Commission requests a site visit in April or May to review the current status of the vernal pool and to determine how it may be impacted by proposed construction. Would also be beneficial to have Allen and Major Associates Incorporated come and speak with the commission. I don't know if there's anything there.
We intend to meet with the Conservation Commission.
Fire department dated January 16th, 2025. Complies with NFPA codes and standards. Comply with Town of Kingston ordinances, rules, and regulations. Knox boxes. Currently, there are 3 located on the property, 1 at the Swayze Gym, 2nd at the fire pump house, and 3 at the seminary building. All to stay or move to better locations. And then call special attention to ordinance article 1008, fire protection regulation. Copy of article is attached, exhibit A, which I'm not gonna read. So, hopefully that's the rest of this. No, we've got one more from the health department. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not the last thing. The health department dated January 9th, 2025. See attached review letter from Kevin Schultz, Deputy Health Officer. Exhibit B is attached. I'm assuming this needs to be read into the record. Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, it's all right. I'm gonna have a sip of water first, though. All right, we have a letter dated January 9th, 2025, and as mentioned, this is from the Deputy Health Officer, Kevin Schultz. Comments regarding site plan review for a multifamily development at 178 Main Street, map 34, lot 17. Sheet C102A and C102E showing portions of the pump/well house along with units number 1 and 2 are within the 100-foot wetland buffer and may require a conditional use permit as spelled out in the Town of Kingston ordinances, rules, and regulations, Article 202-8. Sheet C 104A shows wells number 1, 2, and 3. Well number 1 will provide water service for 4 dwelling units. Well number 2 will provide water service for 4 dwelling units also. Well number 3 will provide water service for the 12 studio units. Based on the occupancy loads, these individual wells will be serving less than 25 occupants per well and less than the 10 connections per well. Therefore, I believe this water supply system will not be considered a public water supply system and not required to be registered with the New Hampshire PUC Drinking and Groundwater Bureau. Please confirm. Sheet C104C shows well number 4 providing service for unit number 13, well number 5 providing service for unit number 8, well number 6 providing service for unit number 7. Sheet C104E shows 2 additional wells servicing units number 1 and 2 but are not identified. I believe these would be wells number 7 and number 8. They should be labeled as such on the plan if this is the case, thereby showing and clarifying that there will be a total of 8 wells on this site. Will there be a backup generator system for the pump house serving the 8 individual units or the well serving the 12-unit building? Please pay close attention to the Town of Kingston Rules and Regulations, Section 1300, Article 1301, Subsurface Disposal Systems. In some aspects of these systems, the town requirements are more stringent than the state's DES requirements. Some examples would be setbacks from property lines and wetlands and their buffers, separation distances from determined seasonal high water tables, required well radius separation, and additional requirements when constructed in aquifer zone, which the site is located in. Sheet C104C shows wells number 4, 5, and 6 less than the town's 100-foot well radius requirement to the septic system's leach field for the 12-unit building. Sheet C104D shows well, and there's a question mark, servicing unit 2 is less than the 100-foot well radius for unit 2 and unit 3, the septic systems also. Be advised that the Town of Kingston requires permitting for both the installation of both the wells and the individual disposal systems. Testing and inspections by the town included, but are not limited to, water tests for each individual well showing that the water quality meets the EPA's minimum standards for potable water, the witness of test pits for individual septic system design, septic design plan review and approval, bed bottom inspections, and final inspections prior to backfill of the systems. I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have or help you in any way should you need it. Respectfully, Kevin Schultz, Deputy Health Officer. Phone number and extension is included. Is there anything there that you'd like to respond to now?
Yes.
Okay.
Number one, regarding the setbacks, we are gonna explore a conditional use permit for some of these things, so we'll have a conversation with the Conservation Commission. Number two, based on input from our hydrogeologist, consultant, this is our understanding as well, that the project is not subject to New Hampshire PUC Drinking and Groundwater Bureau. Three, this is just, we're gonna make some adjustment to well, oh, this is the labels for the wells. We'll add some labels and may have to move some wells around. Four is the backup power for the pump house. Yes, there will be a backup generator. It's not shown on the plan, but we will add it so it's clear. And number five, we are aware of the more stringent rules and regulations for septic, including the separation of the groundwater. Six, we will reevaluate some of these well locations to make sure we're in compliance. And we understand the permitting requirements, number 7, and inspections, number 8.
Next up is from the Heritage Commission, and that's dated January 16th, 2025. Since this is a major change from the project envisioned in the initial application, the applicant will need to grant a new covenant to the town to receive New Hampshire RSA 79E Community Revitalization Tax Incentive. The initial application indicated that work on the seminary building would be performed in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. In initial discussions, it was suggested that the applicant engage a qualified architectural historian or other qualified professional to make such determinations. The individual selected for this role should be acceptable to both the applicant and the town. Is there any comment there that you'd like to provide?
Yes, so we are aware of the project was granted tax relief under 79E. I've been in contact with members of the select board and the planner. We originally were awarded 79E, I think, in 2021, and then revised it in 2022 when the program changed for the first time. And on the second approval, the tax relief was bifurcated by building. So at the time, we had the seminary building, which was the exact same scope it is today, 12 units, historic rehab, and then there was, at the time, a proposed apartment building where the science building was located, which was granted 9 years of tax relief. The seminary was granted 11 because there was additional relief granted for the historic preservation component. So in terms of modifying relief, it's pretty simple in terms of like its severability. So we can just say the 9 years of relief no longer applies because that structure is not being built. And the project is not seeking additional tax relief for the single family homes, while we would like to retain the 11 years that was approved for the seminary, as that scope has not changed. I think the one nuance that the applicant wants to work through is that the applicant recorded a covenant to protect public benefit, and that covenant at the time did not anticipate yet another program change, and so there's a little language that I think could be cleaned up in the covenant to make sure that the current scope, or whatever the approved scope out of this process, is referenced there, just for absolute clarity. So hopefully we can work with the town to achieve that. In terms of the historical consultant, yes, we work closely with the historical consultant on all of our National Park Service deals. This is not a historic tax credit project. We're not seeking historic tax credits here. So we can apply the Secretary of the Interior's standards with the help of a consultant. Trimberg also has a lot of in-house expertise on this, and we can, find a way to document that for the Heritage Commission.
And next up is Historic District comments. These are dated January 12th, 2025. Large leach field adjacent to seminary building rises to 139 feet. Please use plantings to disguise or soften the appearance. And then we have comments from Madeline Willett, who I see here. Comments on Sanborn Seminary / Chinburg project. One drainage plan on page C103 shows a significant swale along Main Street outside the property line. I have a concern that this will impact the streetscape of the 3 proposed houses along Main Street. Instead of them appearing to be incorporated into the Main Street fabric, they will appear that they are separated by a barrier and detached from Main Street. The color renderings provided to the Historic District show a flat streetscape from road to front yard to house entry. This would be a significantly different appearance. Anything we can do to minimize the depth of these swales would help. Also, if the town ever decides to put in sidewalks along Main Street or make other road improvements, a deep swale so close to the road could be problematic. 2, house number 12 seems to be hanging over a detention pond. House may need to be moved on lot to prevent the foundation from appearing inconsistent with the foundations on the other properties flanking it. All 3 houses along Main Street should appear to have the same setback from the road and be parallel to road and should not have any significant foundation elevation changes to each other. No above ground foundation showing without additional HDC review. 3, lighting. Lighting fixtures need to be dark sky compliant, including both street and house lighting. The number of light poles on project seems to be excessive. Consider reducing the number of light poles so it doesn't appear markedly different from surrounding properties. Signed, Madeline Willett, HDC. And then there's a no HDC permit with conditions. See certificate of approval dated 12/11/2024 and conditions dated 12/9/2024 approved on 12/11/2024, and those are attached in Exhibit C. As of December 26, 2024, there were no comments from the police department, and as of January 14th, 2025, no comment from Public Works. I don't know if there was anything, I know we've talked about some of the stuff that was submitted by the HDC, but if there's anything in there that you wanted to speak to.
Yes, we're going to try to address these comments. The leach field, we'll see what we can do to soften that, understanding that the town does have a 4.5-foot groundwater setback offset, so you end up with mounded septic systems. But we'll do what we can to soften that, and if it's plantings that can do it, then we'll do that. The drainage along the front roadway and how it interacts with the houses, we will take a closer look at that. I think that sort of ties into some of what the town engineer has been saying, so we'll look at that. And then lighting fixtures I did talk about earlier. We're willing to eliminate some of these, and that will show up on the next set. That's before the town.
I should note there's an addendum to the application of the Major Sanborn Seminary LLC, which was dated 12/9/2024 and approved by HDC on 12/11/24. The first is that 2 house designs have been approved. Applicant will return to finalize finished details on each house. 2, iron details on the seminary roof will remain and be painted. 3, there will be no candy canes showing on any septic system. And 4, the pump house will be constructed with the same materials as the mill center. So I'd like to take a break from reading. And I see that we have folks here in the audience, so I would ask if the applicant wouldn't mind vacating those seats temporarily. If there are members from the public who wish to give comment, if you could come up, press the button until the mic shows green. I would ask that any questions, actually first, please state your name and address, and any questions that you have should be directed to the board, not directly to the applicant. No, nobody. All right. You did a great job. All right, seeing no public comment, we will open and close public comment at 8 p.m. So I guess the first order of business, as I understand it, would be for the board to invoke jurisdiction if such is their pleasure.
Based on the recommendation of the planner and also request from the engineer, are we ready for jurisdiction?
From my perspective, you are. I mean, we do have things that need to be fixed, but a ton of.
Yeah, my impression, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to say mistake. My impression was that there's an awful lot of items, but the applicant may be able to answer this. Are there any that are going to take more than the 65 days to correct? And I'm thinking that all those plan changes and assuming that these well radii can be fixed without major revisions of the plans, I would think that we would be ready. So I guess I would change this before my motion to ask if the applicant feels that they have enough time to make all the changes. Oh, sorry, I'm wondering if all the changes that would come up. Yeah, come on back up here. So, the reason we're doing this is because the reason I'm asking this is because when we start the 65-day shot clock, admittedly you can extend it at your request if you can't get everything done. But my concern is that there's so many items on this list. Is there anything that you think is going to need more time than a couple months?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll move that we accept jurisdiction then, unless,
We will endeavor to make the revisions needed and resubmit to the town within that time frame. And if for some reason we're unable to, I think the applicant would be willing to grant an extension.
okay. Based on that comment, I will move that we accept jurisdiction on the, now here's a technical question. On just the site plan, we don't want to do the reference to the subdivision? And we can do that next.
I would word it that you're accepting jurisdiction on the application.
And the application, okay.
And then in that manner, if town council thinks it's not necessary to talk about the subdivision aspect, no harm, no foul.
Right, okay. Moved as, there was no request that we move for jurisdiction on the application.
Motion by Peter Coffin, is there a second? Second by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Passes unanimously. Here's your vote. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. I sort of interpreted your nod as a positive vote there. All right, so I guess here's a question that I have. Are we able to move forward with some of these items in absence of clarification on whether this is proceeding as a subdivision, or like we can just move forward with any of the site plan?
I believe you can.
Okay.
We can certainly move to,
What you're talking about is making a motion to send the hydrogeology
Yes.
study
Yes.
to Dana. Absolutely.
yeah.
And
Because
the condo docs and, I guess the question about the subdivision to town council.
would happen with the
review.
condo docs. So
Okay.
that's there's a natural relationship there.
Okay.
So we'll do that one at a time. I'll move that we send the hydrogeologic study to Dana Truslow for review, professional review, and establish whatever bond is necessary, escrow account is necessary to do that.
And also the motion, just so there's not any concern, that this grants the ability of the applicant and Dana to talk in between meetings.
Okay. Yeah, so the survey and to communicate with Dana Truslow's professional, on professional terms.
So a motion by Peter Coffin, is there a second? Second again by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And then the.
Motion, I'll move that we send the condominium documents to town attorney for review. And what was the other thing we're gonna?
Ask for her input
On whether this constitutes a subdivision.
Right. And whether it constitutes a subdivision, so those are two motions. It's just silly.
The lot lines on the plans. You get, in one of Glenn's comments, the binding.
Meets and bounds need to be on
The
there.
right easement for the, I mean, basically the lots, it's not building. You're not doing a square footage in a building, you're doing a lot.
So I understood that it's just specifically for her to weigh in on whether or not the project falls within the parameters of the site, of a subdivision.
Subdivision, yeah. And so there was another thing that we talked about establishing the limited common areas and all that kind of stuff, but.
That's all part
That
of
would
the
be
condominium
That's,
review process.
Okay.
they have to do that first, so. But this is just a legal question about whether, on the condo docs have things like, you know, any change has to be approved by the planning board, and things like that. So that's separate, and then the other thing we're asking the attorney to do is to weigh in on whether subdivision is, a condominium is a subdivision.
I'd like to get that turned around within the next week, so we know immediately.
I'll second.
Okay.
Motion by Peter, second by Rob again. Any further conversation or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously again. So then, the conditional use permit in the Aquifer Protection District obviously would be pending review by
Review by
Dana. The conditional use permit or not in the wetlands, there's some further conversation that needs to happen with the Conservation Commission. And then the gym and parking waiver, I don't know if we want to talk about that now, or what would the board like to do?
We can open up discussion on that. I would think that we ought to determine what the use of the gym is. And one of the things that we may want to ask is, from the select board, is whether they intend to continue using the high school as the voting location, or whether they want, at the end of the construction, to revert back to Swayze Gym for voting, because there'll be fewer parking places. So that may be something that Peter may want to bring up with the select board and with Tammy and the moderator to determine what their future intent is, because that will affect parking.
So you're proposing that we have that discussion internally and not vote on the waiver until the next hearing?
Yeah, I think we want to really get some answers to how much parking is really needed, because, and what the use of the gym is going to be, because right now, my understanding is it's pretty much used by the high school students to, who get bussed up after school to that gym to use the ball fields. And that doesn't require a lot of parking. I mean, a lot of kids drive up, but. So.
If I may.
Yeah.
I think we would like to proceed regardless of the town's decision on where ultimately voting will be held. We cannot accommodate 200 parking spaces for a one-day-a-year event.
Yeah, right.
It's just not feasible. No one will want a parking lot of that size with the lighting and the stormwater. It would be atrocious, and it would not make the project feasible. So, I mean, obviously, if the town wants to keep voting in the Swayze Gym, it will be a change from the current condition, because there's a lot more paved surface there that people can park on. But there is a reasonable amount of parking next to the Swayze Gym, and there's also parking across the street at the Bakey School. So it's conceivable to me that it could come back there, or if the town finds other accommodations, that's great too. But ultimately, we need the waiver. There's not a world in which we don't proceed without that waiver. That's good feedback.
Thank you, yeah. Yeah, no, we would not, we would not try to expand upon the parking since there isn't any, but the town needs to know that.
I'd just like to add, I'd like to see the changes on the 5-foot, to the lot line, those parking spots, either move them, double up on one side there and remove those ones, so.
Yeah, I don't, they're pretty tight in there as it is, those rows.
Where are they now? Are they sitting on that
They're
property
right
line
towards
right
Magnus.
now?
Yeah, it's,
They're right here.
they're as shown on the map there, but, I mean, that was,
Is that an existing condition or are
it's
they?
existing, yeah. Those places, those parking spots that are shown on the map, on the cover sheet here are existing. And it's interesting that I'm a little confused about the existing parking spaces being shown along the entranceway. You're going to call that Norway Spruce or something, lane, because you got the kiosk there, and you're going to lose a lot of parking spaces along there where the pullover is, and the kiosk is. So they're in lighter gray, and I wasn't sure if that was showing existing conditions, and that you'll lose at least half those parking spaces.
Our intent was not to maintain ample on-street parking on that entry.
Okay, yeah.
We're trying to make it a more residential, narrower street. There's a pullover there so residents can get out and grab their mail. But our intent was not to have, there can probably accommodate on-street parking on one side, I would say, but not both.
Right. So I guess that answers the question. The light gray parking spaces are on the existing conditions, and they are going to be removed.
Correct.
That is kind of what I had figured there. All right, thanks. Oh yeah, the whole bunch next to what is now the tennis courts that are going to be occupied, but yeah. Okay.
So did I note correctly that the overall proposal is for a net loss of 6 parking spaces, or was that?
No, way more than that.
Way more.
Okay, I must have taken some bad notes then.
So the 6 parking spaces was in reference to the tightest condition that was previously discussed. So there's an existing parking lot,
Got it.
an existing condition that is essentially right on the property line with 6 head-in spaces towards the property line. And if that parking lot were to be built today, it is obviously not to the regulation. The reason that we are proposing to keep it as it is that it's maintaining more parking for the gym, and there's really nowhere else for that lot to go because of wetlands and septic systems on the other side of that lot.
That makes way more sense, thank you. Yeah.
So the reason I was concerned about it is where you have the landscaped area that kind of extends beyond the edge of that parking lot. Because looking at it from a maintenance point of view, to plow an area like that, which I'm familiar with doing, is existing conditions, you're able to plow straight in and then be able to line up and plow straight back this way. By putting that landscaped area nose out that way, the only way you can remove snow from those parking places is to go in and scoop it out. And by doing that, you're pushing it up against the property line, and the fence is already knocked over anyways. It's just a concern that I have, that if I was the abutter, I'd be very concerned about further impacts to my property. And we have a 20-foot setback, and there's a reason for a 20-foot setback, and existing conditions are not. It could be a problem to that abutter. So that's why I brought it up, and I think that that something else could be done there, is what I'm saying. And I know parking spaces are a premium there, but I think you really should look at it.
Yeah, we can take a look. I suspect that providing a setback there or a buffer there will result in additional loss of parking spaces, is I guess all I'm saying, and we're willing to do that, but.
And that's where the 6
Yes,
spots will be
I
lost.
just think, yes, I just think we can look at it, but I suspect we will not be able to gain all 6 of those back if we remove them, just given the constraints of that corner of the site. Certainly, if there were any additional impacts to the abutter or damage to their fence or anything like that, we would be responsible and repair that, and we would endeavor to have our maintenance teams educated in how to remove snow in a proper manner. So it is a management task for sure, but I'm confident that we can figure it out.
As an alternative, I would just say if you wanted to put some sort of a wall there or a better fence, so anybody that's plowing there wouldn't be going up into the property, abutting property. So something could be done there as a barrier, because that was my concern. You keep the parking space, but just modify something there so prevent impacts to the abutter. I think that's the result we're looking for, I think.
So I have a question for Dennis. Dennis, what if we removed those 6 parking spots and just added them to the other 3 rows that are there? So in other words, 2 for each side, just extended those. Would that impact the wetlands?
As long as it's off the abutting property.
Yeah, it would. So what I'm suggesting is
north.
take the 6 that are there and just add them 2 on each end of each of those 3 rows.
That's certainly something they can look at doing and come up with a solution.
This way they eliminate those 6 slots.
You may have to look at the slopes there. There's probably a reason why they never made that bigger.
Well,
Yes, they're.
I'm sure they'll come up with some sort of a plan. They'll take a look at it.
I'm curious, I usually carry around a smaller plants like that.
Yeah, if it's paved, it may be too close to the wetlands too. So.
We'll be sure to address that comment in some manner.
Yeah, in all those good areas.
It does have snow storage out on, what is it, Norway? Way coming in? That butts those spots.
Where are you looking? Whereabouts?
C-102?
Oh, yeah.
You really need most snow storage space because, yeah, you're up against it there.
Just looking at the same sheet here, if I may, you'll see that so we're on C-102, there's the 100-foot wetland buffer is the dotted line. So you'll see that this lot, the existing condition, is within that 100-foot wetland buffer. So modifying this lot and pushing it towards the wetland would be something that I strongly suspect the Conservation Commission would not like. And I actually see that lot is just shy of the 75 foot? Is that the 75 foot? That's the 50 foot. So we're right up against the no builds wetland buffer there. So again, we'll take a look at this, but there was a reason that we didn't touch this lot. It's because that corner is very congested.
So I guess I'm curious how best to proceed, because I hear that you want some sort of direction relative to the parking as it's proposed, but the town also sort of needs to weigh in on what the plan is for.
I think,
for
no,
the
that,
gym.
well, I think that, I mean, we're losing more than 55 spaces and then keep maintaining, 30 or so. So I don't think voting there is ever going to go back. if Dan has better information than I do about that. I know they voted for the next round to be at the high school, so. I don't think we can base it based on the count. Yeah, I don't think we can base this information based on whether.
The next election is just mentioning that.
It is, the next election was, I saw in the, again, maybe we ought to have someone who knows what, I saw in the select board notes that it was being held at the high school gym.
I would have put that, I've heard other information.
Okay, Dan says no. So,
Dan, would you like to
come on up,
and
yeah, and then.
speak to this?
I have a couple questions for the developer rather than for the committee, if I can express those.
Can we, if we could speak to the voting first?
Okay.
Okay, and then if we need to reopen comment, we can do that.
Okay.
No, sorry, stay, are
Well, we're
you,
gonna have the vote.
are you aware of where
Yes, the
voting
vote
is?
is gonna be held at Swayze Gym this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's the next vote is March.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you wanna pull a seat up, that's fine. We'll reopen public comment if you have questions.
Yeah, I do have several chairs.
Yeah, pull up a chair. I would just ask if the comments could be directed to the board, though, or questions could be directed.
You'll be able to answer them, that's why I have questions.
It's just procedural.
Yep.
We'll get them
They're
answered
listening.
one way or the other.
Okay.
They promised to listen to your questions.
All right. Once again, Dan Doyle representing the school district.
And just your address. for-
My personal address is 156 Main Street.
Thank you.
The first question I have is, obviously, we want to account on final parking spots for use for Swayze Gym. Obviously, if we start eliminating spots, we're going to render that gym useless to the school district at some point. Because we do have events there 7 days a week, all year round, and parking is an issue over there. So that's question number one. Question number two is the developer stated something about putting in a generator for the emergency well system for the fire suppression system. Unless there's been changes, my understanding is that the well at Chase Field that the school owns supplies water to that tank for fire suppression. So if there is going to be a generator put in, is that going to be installed on school property, or is it going to be installed on property related to this development? Or is Chimber going to drill a new well specifically for that fire suppression system? So that was another question I have for the developer. There were a couple things that I brought up in the past to the developer regarding a couple access things or concerns that the school has. And I believe Chimberg agreed that they would take a look at it and proceed with it. But one of them is that the ADA entrance for the gym is on the west side of the gym. And with the new development plan here, there is no access to go into the gym using the ADA entrance. So once again, unless there's some changes made, that gym will not be accessible to handicap. The other thing I brought up too was the crosswalk going from Beatty. They have a 2 crosswalk system there, and I recommended that they would change it to a 1 crosswalk, where the crosswalk would go from the Bakey property straight across to the sidewalk that's adjacent to home number 11 on the plans, instead of doing a double crosswalk, simply because when the teachers are bringing the kids over to Swayze Gym for gym classes, when you're trying to herd 30 kids across Main Street and you're dealing with 2 crosswalks, you need more teachers to do it. If there's 1 crosswalk, we just have to stop traffic once when we're crossing over. So that was another request from the school district as far as some of the development of this property.
Okay, thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you.
Before we close public comment again, is there Any lingering questions or concerns? No? All right, we will close public comment. And if you wouldn't mind coming back up, hopefully for the final time, and maybe we could quickly respond to some of these. So
we received those comments from the SAU, and we didn't get those comments in time to make the planning board submission before you, but we've already made the revision for the ADA entry, so there is now a walkway to that entry, and simplified the crosswalks. So those have already been, our internal documents already show those updates. It's just not on your plans, so that will be in your next revision. The generator that was discussed earlier is for our domestic water service on the site. So our pump house on our property will have a generator for our domestic water needs. The off-site well that serves the domestic water for the Swayze gym and fire suppression for the gym and the seminary is on the SAU's property, and we're proposing no modifications there. Then obviously the parking is something that we'll need to discuss. It's a challenging site in terms of trying to make something economically feasible, and parking does not create revenue, and we're hopeful that the abutting Bakey School is a good overflow parking site to accommodate the programming at the Swayze gym.
what's the final count on parking spot loss for the Swayze gym?
Well, I think it'd be really hard to calculate because there was also a high school on the site. So what parking that existed previously was for the school, and what part was for the gym? Like, this was never a standalone gym facility that had 150 parking spaces, and now we're, whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that'd be very hard to parse. I can certainly tell you the overall, if we can go back to the existing conditions plan and do a count of the overall parking spot loss, but it's not an apples to apples comparison because the programming before was for a regional high school. So, yeah.
What spots does the gym have as you have it on your 40 plan?
I think they have, it's 40.
40?
And that's noted at the top of C102.
Yeah, I think we're not really in position to discuss the waivers until the SAU comes up with a minimum acceptable to them, and if that's more than the maximum acceptable to the applicant, then there's going to have to be some discussion about that whole arrangement, and it's outside of our purview. But I'm not sure we can come up with a magic number without having an idea of what the needs are.
I guess I'm also curious what was sort of negotiated as part of this relative to use of the building and parking, and how that was worded in the agreement.
I would have to go back to the agreement. I don't have a strong recollection of parking from the agreement, but I can go back to that and see what it is. For those that are unfamiliar, Major Sanborn Seminary LLC, the applicant owns the Swayze gym and the property all around it, the entire property, and the SAU is a tenant of ours who leases the gym from us. So I can go back to that lease agreement and see what the parking requirement was.
I guess I feel like that's critical to the conversation, because we can't really, I guess, things that fall outside the scope of that agreement.
I don't recall off the top of my head. There may be mention of parking. I don't recall it specifically, but that doesn't mean my memory's faulty, so I'll double check that.
So I guess given that we still have some figuring out to do there, there are quite a few items still to tackle here.
If I may, something just reoccurred to me. I do believe we've been in contact with the superintendent, Tom Ambrose, and conceptually he agreed that overflow could be at the Bakey. I'm pretty sure we've had that high-level conversation, at least conceptually. So the conversation started. We obviously need to circle back with the SAU and make sure that everyone's comfortable. But
yeah, I would imagine that there may be some area to have some extra parking as well, but, you know, if you have special events or something that, but yeah, I would think that, I mean, during the school day, none of the kids coming over from Bakey need parking at all.
Well, during the school day, we don't use it, but.
Yep, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
During the school day, our kids use it during the inclement weather, but the park district or the town uses the gym more than we do. They use it 3/4 of the time for pickleball and youth basketball and everything else. So that may be another person you may want to talk to also is the town rec as far as what they're requiring as far as parking there. All I was looking for is just, you know, a number of parking spots that are going to be available to the school, and obviously we can work around that depending on what events we're having there. But just a final count of parking so I can relay that to the superintendent as far as this is what we're going to be up against.
What'd you say that was, 46? 40?
Yeah, if you take away the 6, yeah, that are on this side, 8, 7, and 11.
34 if you want that setback.
What was that?
It's currently at 40, but that includes those 6 perilous spaces on the property line, so.
And does that include handicap spots too?
Yes, it does.
So I mean, you can't use those unless you're handicapped, so I kind of take those out of the equation, the handicap spots, because they're really not available for everybody. They're designated for.
And it looks like there are 3 designated for that purpose.
Looks like
Correct.
4 designated for that.
Yep, that's true.
So,
Take a look
3
at that.
or 4.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what the
We
wording
made a deal,
is.
we made a deal, but
Yep.
then we make a deal.
Right.
all right, thank you.
All right. And Paul is being very politically correct, but they
own it.
Yeah.
They own this. They're trying to do a development. We, as a town, want to retain a resource that someone else owns. So
We are getting a lot out of it.
it is important to understand that the parking area is constrained and we want to use the gym. So that should be part of the deliberative discussion.
And we're proposing additional potential loss to meet the standards that we're talking about.
Bakey's not a long walk.
No. All right, so having said all that, where are we at currently? Because I feel like we're gonna have to move to continue. And I guess I'm wondering about a date when folks feel like we might be able to come back and tackle some of the outstanding items that we've talked about tonight.
Because our protocol is that the next available meeting for you guys would be the 3rd Tuesday in February. When we continue, right, when we continue in that avenue, we say that we want to see the plans 10 days before the next hearing. So it becomes the Thursday,
The 6th
the 6th,
of February.
which limits the time that you have to do turnaround, although it sounds like you've been actively working on updating this plan set in the time that, since you've submitted it to us.
I guess my question, what's the likelihood that Dana will have things back by the 18th of February too for us to review, and town council? Town council, you said, could be pretty.
Town council is gonna take very long, and Dana may already have the document. I'm not sure, but she hasn't officially been given the okay to
Permission
do
to
it,
read it.
to do anything.
Got it.
And she's very quick about getting stuff done. That's,
Do we need to do anything to set up the escrow account?
we
Just
can
vote?
work with, we can do that
Oh,
offline.
you can do that offline,
Planning
okay.
board does not need to do that.
Yep. So if we're just talking schedule here, And just candidly, I have a conflict on the 18th of February that I cannot reschedule, so, and a little more time to work through these comments would probably be beneficial. So I think what was the day that you think you can submit by?
We'll need a couple weeks.
So we would submit mid to late February, and then that would get within the at least the 10-day prior, to get on the, was it March 4th meeting?
March 18th?
I mean, our standard is to go to the 18th.
Oh.
We have, on
We
occasion,
can.
continued things to the work session before.
Yeah.
I mean, if that works better for you, that's something the board could consider.
I think that makes sense to me, because that way, if somebody puts in an application that would normally go to the 18th,
Right, this is
we would offset to,
offset, right?
yeah.
I guess just a sort of a process question. If we, if we work diligently to address the comments tonight and coordinate with the various entities we need to, is it conceivable that at the next meeting we could receive site plan approval and/or, if required, subdivision approval? Or is this, I'm just curious from and I know you can't promise me anything, but like from a typical process standpoint, is that something that is easily achieved, or is that unlikely and we're going to need a third meeting?
If you, I mean, there are substantial things. If you feel comfortable that you can address these, it could get done at the next hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't think the hydrogeologic study review would be something that would cause an additional hearing, because Dana and Steve work really well together. So they don't, when I've seen them work on different projects, they understand each other and they just get stuff done.
Steve's the best.
Yeah, they just get stuff done, so I really don't see that as being the issue. I think the issue is you did get a lot of comment this evening, and if we did go to March 4th, that gives you 2 extra weeks than if we had gone to February 18th. So it seems possible to me.
March 4th would be, I guess, would be my preferred date if that is a possibility for you guys.
So we can do that, and then materials would be due by the 20th of February.
I think that's acceptable. Is that okay, Wayne?
Why don't we do that?
So would anyone like to move that we continue?
Yeah, just on the subdivision thing?
Yeah.
Is that just a notice to abutters?
Yes, if in fact, our council agrees with you that we have to do that, if she says, no, this doesn't constitute a subdivision, there would be no need to do that additional notification.
When would
But
those notices
but
have to
if we will turn this around, because we have, their condo docs are already in our possession. So we can send that to council on Thursday. And she's very good about getting back to us.
So would anyone like to move that we continue this application hearing to the 4th of March?
I'll move that we continue this current hearing to the 4th of March at 6:45 p.m. here at the Town Hall, and with any revised plans due by,
Was it February 20th?
February 20th is the date, the 10-day date. He didn't, yeah, we looked at February 20th.
So a month from today?
Yeah,
Well,
from yesterday, from Monday, yeah.
Motion by Peter, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Simple.
Again by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you
So
for your
thank
time
you very
tonight.
much.
Thank you, guys.
I was gonna ask if anyone wanted a break, which I guess if you do, we can still do that, but it looks like there's not much left on the agenda, so happy to just push through if. Push through, all right. The first item is an invoice from Civil Construction Management dated January 6, 2025. And this is for CJ&J Site Plan Engineering Review, 83 Route 125, R10-9.
It was by board consensus? Yep.
Is the board in consensus that we can sign this invoice for a total of $880?
Aye.
This is the request for invoice. Oh, sorry, thank you.
I'll move that we accept the minutes of December 10th as submitted.
Is there a second? All those in favor of accepting the December 10th, 2024 minutes?
Aye.
Two abstainers.
Abstain or, yeah, so two, is that enough? Four, yeah.
Yes.
4 passes, right?
Yes, it does.
All right. I can get something else.
Well, more discussion.
Okay, so we have a request from Dan Parks dated July 17th, in regards to R19-32, 7 Smallpox Road, for a release from his bond account.
So he's requesting about this amount.
Okay.
And he has about this amount.
So
I
he's
guess-
requesting a release of approximately $4,760, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay,
And then that's his amount.
and there's, looks like roughly 68,000 remaining.
And I guess we just need to know if that's enough to fix the roads, because I think the way this bond works is that the town did an assessment of the roads before they started, and we'll do it after everybody's finished. And if it's requires major fixing, there should be enough in the bond to repair it.
The amount that we actually asked from him for that bond was $63,000, I believe.
Did they split it? Did they split it with?
They did.
They split it with
With what used to be Wilson.
Wilson, but
And
now
is
it's
now
Lewis Builders.
Lewis Builders,
Right.
yeah.
They're supposed to maintain 63, 170.
And he's supposed to have 63, and Lewis has 63. So if he presently has, even if we return the interest, 67, then we're still keeping more than what he is required to have
Okay.
in there,
That answered the question, yeah.
by quite a bit.
Yeah, it was, so that's
So
where
do
it's
we
coming
need a
from, is
motion
interest.
on that, or just a consensus?
That's provided that the cost of repairs don't exceed what that amount would be. I mean,
Right, but if we made an
the
agreement,
argument,
that-
it's really two arguments here. He could easily say, well, I've been trucking for the past few years and there's been no damage, so therefore I wouldn't expect any damage in the future. But the other side of the fence is, what if there is, the last year that he's trucking there, that there is major damage there, is there enough money to cover it?
right,
It's
and
hard to
the
predict.
difference between when we first established the amount and now is that he's stretched this out over a considerably longer period of time, and with inflation and whatever else goes along, the interest normally would have covered that, or might have covered some of it, but I don't know, I think that's,
Well, again, it's just a matter of opinion, how the town wants to feel. If you want to be totally secure, you wouldn't release it. But then again, if you're sympathetic to the guy and you think that the road is going to stand up over time, then you could accommodate his wish. Maybe talking to the road agent, get his opinion too.
yeah,
And honestly, from my perspective,
yeah, that's the
we
person.
may, if in fact
We have told him how much he needs for the road bond. We've told him it's $63,170. He's keeping well more than that. If in fact the road damages are greater than that, we either tell him that they're greater than that because we have evidence of it, or we reassess the approval that established the bond at $63,170. But in any event, for us to keep more money in that account than we actually said he has to keep in the account doesn't sound right to me.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we would,
And if we're worried about how inflation and the time and the effort that's happened is what our concern is, I doubt the change in the cost of the road is gonna be only $6,000.
right. And the time to have addressed that was when he requested, a doubling of the amount of time that he needed
To do
to
this.
do this, and we should have said, well, okay, so
And he
projected
has to come
bond.
back to us. We don't have an agreement beyond our established date. So he's gonna have to come back to us.
Here's the other factor that comes into play here. I mean, it isn't like it's a hidden road. The town goes in and out of there all the time and checks it. If there's significant damage and it appears that it's gonna be well above, it's something that can be addressed later on.
Now, yeah,
So,
we're telling you now.
so the low number, if it's gonna be a low number, could be addressed later, saying, hey, you're damaging the road, fix it, okay? Or we're gonna have to cause an increase to the bond. So if you're covered by the base amount, then you can release the interest, right? That's what you're getting at, right?
That's really what I'm getting at. As much as we have a responsibility to make sure that a bond is covered, his bond is covered.
Yeah.
And he's asking for money to come back over the money that we have said you have to have it. And now we're saying, we're not sure that's enough, and we're gonna hold more of the money that's accrued because we've held your money for a long time. It smacks as not a good process to me.
No, we would have had to have that in the agreement ahead of time, that the town would retain interest.
And it would be, I mean, this is a great time, especially since we seem to have a different new road agent. Let's see if there's been damage, if there is something out there, because they're gonna have to come back. We presently have an agreement that has expired. He's going to ask for more time. We're going to have a public process, and then we can legitimately reevaluate whether the bond is the
Right, that's the time to do it, okay. So, which, I think we should probably agree to do this as by consensus, but, or vote, the chairman's choice, but then we need to answer the question, I guess, and may have just done that, and that was, you were gonna find out if he had any documentation of that thing that you had found.
I have not been able to find anything.
Yeah, I know you didn't, but did he?
So he has applied, he's applied to come back to us
Okay.
to talk about it.
So he didn't have a copy of it that?
He has a copy of the draft document I found.
Oh.
That he has signed.
Oh.
Still not endorsed by either of the two town signatories. So it's basically useless.
All right, so we're back to
We're back to square one.
on that, so
If
we can
he
address
wants
it,
to
we can address it
understand
then, yeah.
Then he has to come back and talk to us. And that's the appropriate time for us to say, look, we've had our road agent, our DPW director go out and look, and we're concerned that there's not enough money. And so to get your extension, you have to come up with more money.
Okay, so I'll move so we can make this official.
Yeah, so does this number bring him back to what he initially had to put down? So can't we hold it, or can't the town hold anything over that?
My concept is,
That's fine.
I don't
Yeah,
see
yeah.
how you hold more money than you've told him he has to hold.
Right.
I just don't see.
I wouldn't think it was fair if it was me.
I just don't see how you can do that.
So what we're doing now is I'll move that we return the amount requested, as long as it doesn't bring it below the required bond value, and that we address the other part of it with the application.
With the new.
Yeah, and we can
Specific
get,
to any damage that's been done to the
yeah,
road.
we're just voting now to return the overage on the bond.
Bring up something like, what happens if this changes in 2 months from now and we get another request? So do we need to make this clear that this will be the only request?
Yeah,
Well-
we can say that this request is what we're entertaining for the money that is being held presently by the town. And quite frankly, maybe we do up the bond, with this next request for an extension.
Well,
But that's something we have to do when we're actually
Right.
talking about it.
And he should understand that since his, is working right now on an expired permit, that he has to come in, the next thing he has to do before we talk about any more bond renewing is you need an application if you want to keep,
Everybody has signed on.
if you want to keep digging, you got to make an application, and then we can work the bond issue. It
And
gives us time to
honestly,
talk to the town engineer
He's
in,
been very
not town.
upfront with the
Yeah.
town, other than that one example. Yeah. But it was a while ago, and he wants to do the right thing, and he understands that we just don't have any evidence that says the agreement has been extended. So he served the application.
Yeah, he has submitted an application.
Yeah.
So we have a motion by Peter to return the amount requested. Is there a second?
That's it, yeah. That's the end of the motion.
As long as it doesn't go below the current bond.
It
Yeah,
won't,
it
yeah.
Yeah, and they said that.
Second by Rob. All those in favor? That passed, right? Yep. Any other business to discuss this evening? Okay. Barring any, we are adjourned at